Kia ora and welcome to the ILANZ podcast. My name is Anitesh, Govind, and today I'm joined by my co-host, Grant Pritchard from ILANZ. Our guest today is Frazer Barton, who is the president of New Zealand Law Society. Welcome to the show, Frazer.
Thank you, Anitesh, and kia ora.
Kia ora. Now, we're going to talk to you about your legal career, Frazer, and we're going to talk about your goals and the challenges you face. So I'll hand over to my co-host to ask a couple of questions, and I'll ask you a couple of questions, and we'll go from there.
Kia ora, Frazer, and thank you so much for joining us. I know your time is very precious with your role, both within the firm and also as president of the Law Society. So I really appreciate you taking the time to speak to us and also to our members through this podcast format. And so just to start off, maybe you could give us a bit of background. I know you reasonably well just because I'm on the Law Society Council with you. But for those who haven't met you before, how did you get into the law? What made you decide that that was something you wanted to pursue? And how did you get into this career that you've now found yourself in?
Thank you, Grant. I went into the law because it seemed to be something that appealed to the skill, my interests in terms of history and the arts. It seemed a logical process, and I was inspired by I had an uncle who was a QC, and I was brought up on all his stories of his cases, like Fitzgerald and Muldoon, and I thought this was amazing. What you can do in the law. So that's what drove me to study law. I studied at Otago University, and then my first job was in Christchurch at Duncan Cottrell for a couple of years as a graduate, always working in litigation. And then from there back to Dunedin, and with my present firm, I became a partner 35 years ago. And I've always worked in that civil litigation space. And it depends a little bit on what's happening in the economy at the time. If it's maybe after the 87 crash and after the GFC, lots of insolvency work, and more recently, a lot of professional indemnity work, acting for law firms being sued, and then in the last few years, quite a bit of treaty-related work, which has been absolutely fascinating, and it's helped bring my knowledge levels up to speed. So I really appreciated that.
Thank you, Frazer. So part of your role of being a lawyer and going from there, what made you want to kind of become the president of New Zealand Law Society? How did that come about?
I started off at the branch level in Otago, and I was asked to suggest that I go on to the branch council, and I did that, and then I ended up as branch president, which then took me to the council, the New Zealand council level, which Grant's on at present, and that gave me a much greater insight into how the Law Society functions on a national level. So I went from the regional to the national, and then when the South Island Vice President, his term was finishing, and it was suggested that I stand in his place. So I was elected as South Island Vice President, so I was onto the board, and then I was elected last year as President. So I suppose at every stage I've learned more, and I'm still learning a whole lot, because this is a big, sophisticated organisation with 16,000 members and 16,000 different opinions out there. So it's it's a learning exercise, and so I go from one level to the next, and now as president.
Great. And what are your goals from this? So now that you're the president, and this is your second year, I believe, or into this role, what are your goals as the president of the New Zealand Law Society?
Well, we're facing some pretty big challenges, and you can see that with the independent review. There's going to be significant change ahead, and so what's going to be important is our goal is to maintain our presence, our influence, our mana even if we're going to see the organisation potentially split between a regulator and a representative body, that representative body must be a strong, independent voice for the profession. And so that's going to be a big goal ahead. And what's important is that the rule of law be absolute centre stage at all times. So we've got, there are some threats out there in the present climate. And so our goal is to have a good stabilised regime now and to start positioning ourselves for these very significant changes as we adapt to changes in our economy and our society and in our legal structure.
Yeah, and that kind of issue of the independent review, which is happening, I guess you can tell us a bit more about where we are with that right now. At what stage are we at?
Right. Well, the report was released back in March, and
yes.
So we're in the process of putting together a reply or a commentary to the minister.
Sure.
So she asked for that when we saw her back in March, and so to do that, we've been consulting with the wider profession through our council, and we're putting together a response now, and so that will go to the minister.
Yes.
So what we're hoping is to get some sort of indication as to where things stand on the legislative timetable, because as you appreciate, these things can take quite some time.
Yes.
And so end of August we get that. So end of next month we get that to her. We have a council meeting to talk all that through before then. There is a draft in place, and as you expect, there's quite a wide range of views in the profession, and some people welcoming recommendations and others not. So it's actually quite a big job working all these together and working out a majority view, if you like. So that's where we stand.
Sure. Well, you've got a big piece of work to do with that, because there is a lot which has to be done, as you've said. In that respect, I think a lot of your time will be taken into dealing with that issue. Do you have any goals for in-house lawyers, though? Is there anything that you have particular in mind that you would like to see, or how you'd like to help in-house lawyers?
Well, obviously, they're a very big proportion of the profession, growing proportion.
Yes.
And we need to have them engaging as part of the representative body going forward. And I think one of the, as you may have heard, we've got some financial issues facing us in the future on the representative side, and we're going to need to charge a membership fee. And this is a stage at which people might choose to opt out of being part of the Law Society, and it's really important we have everyone engaged, so we are representing right across the spectrum, and particularly the ILANZ lawyers. Now, the way we structure this in terms of membership fees, and I know it's got some challenges, and we're very keen to engage and talk that through and structure things going forward in the friendliest way possible to make sure we get maximum engagement. I mean, it is really important, as I say, if we are going to be a voice of influence and authority in the future, we need to be speaking for the overwhelming majority of the legal profession, in that centre stage are our ILANZ members. So we need them to feel engaged and connected. So that is going to be really important.
Yeah, and do you think there's going to be, with the independent review, the way that the Law Society is structured right now, do you think that's going to change the way the board is structured and how the committees come together? Because currently it's the ILANZ is representative, and they have one vote amongst all the other votes. Do you think that's going to change with the independent review, and would that affect how in-house lawyers will be managed in any way?
Well, look, there's two possible paths going forward here. Well, probably more, but let's say there's two. And let's say the recommendations that the government decides they want to press ahead with the majority of those recommendations, and that we're on a track for that to happen. The suggestions in the report involve a pretty significant change to the governance structure. And they don't spend, so the regulator will have a board. The suggestion is it's a board appointed by the minister.
Yes.
We've got lots of feedback on that. So, as for all the present council members, they will have nothing to do with the regulator, because the governance will be arranged by ministerial appointment.
Sure.
Then the representative body. And so the report hasn't actually talked about disbanding the council, but it's just said that the council is too big and the board's too small. So, and I think, that's probably a fair comment, that the board is too small with 4 people elected geographically, president. And the council is a big body of 25 with a lot of turnover. And that's a little bit unwieldy. Now, so we've got a balance, we've got a strike here between representing all our constituent groups, and so ILANZ is one of those, and we've got the Whangaroa, Pacific Lawyers, Irish Law Firm Group, Bar Association, and the branches and the sections. So, and they all have slightly different interests. So for us to be successful going forward, we've got to be able to engage with them and have them feel involved and connected. At the same time, we need an effective board structure too. So there hasn't been a lot of guidance in the independent review on this. So now that's one path. The other path is, let's say we have a government not so keen on adopting these recommendations. An election here, and that this goes on to the back burner, and basically the status quo prevails. But our problem is that financially the status quo can't continue for that much longer, and we do need to start structuring ourselves. My personal view is that one of the other options that was referred to in the independent review report was what was called functional separation. So the Law Society continues, but those 2 divisions are more obviously separate with different sort of governance structures. So that is a path we might need to go down now. And then we've got to work out a governance structure for the representative body. And so that, so we've got a balance we have to strike here, and as Grant will be aware, we're hoping come October to look at some constitutional changes that will not disenfranchise anyone, but will rather address the problem with the size of our board and the sort of lack of diversity on our board. Where the suggestion is that we, at the moment, we continue the geographical, so that's 4 people elected geographically and a president. We continue with that, and then there's another perhaps 3 voting positions on the and they're appointed. Those people are appointed by the elected members, and that would cover off, because sometimes the geographical election, you have a skills gap, and to pick up people from with the skills that they're lacking, the backgrounds we're lacking, or in terms of diversity. So that would give the ability, if you like, a little bit. If you look at Parliament, the list candidates, that gives each party the ability to add more diversity to and different skill set to the candidates they're putting up. So it's a little bit like that. And so sorry, it's a long way of answering your question about ILANZ going forward and one voice. But it is important that we stay connected with all of those constituent bodies, but they all have slightly different interests. And it's also very important. Grant has been sort of stressing this for us about if we have a membership fee arrangement, that it's got to be done in a way that doesn't make things difficult for any of our constituent council members, and there's a worry too about, will employers pay a membership fee? So we've got there is a financial imperative, but we've got to work out the way of doing it as satisfactorily as possible, and to continue for everyone to feel involved and engaged in the process. And probably when you look at our constituent groups, ILANZ is actually the biggest party. That's in terms of percentage of the profession. If you look at a branch, they're actually a small percentage, and other sections. But ILANZ is a very big chunk of our membership, so we've got to cater for them.
Yeah, because I think when I joined ILANZ, it was 1/4 of the lawyers were in-house. And I think over the years, it's kind of become 1/3. And Grant, you might have a view about that as well. That has changed significantly in the past 10 years.
Yeah, look, it does. There is incremental kind of proportional growth in the amount of lawyers, or the proportion of lawyers, in New Zealand that are practicing in-house. And so we're at about just shy of 29% at the moment. And just on the projections, probably within the next 3 to 5 years, that'll bump up to a full third. So 1 in 3 lawyers in New Zealand will be practicing in-house. So it's certainly a great part of the profession to be in. And there's a real symbiosis and an ecosystem there with our private practice lawyers as well, in terms of, a lot of the work that is flowing into law firms. The bulk of it, in many cases, is coming from in-house lawyers. And so we're driving not only work into private practice firms, but also potentially stress and stressors. And so we're responsible for some of the mental stress and the workloads that our private practice firms and practitioners are experiencing. So that's probably a good lead into the next question. So, Frazer, what are some of the challenges that you are facing, or you think you'll face, in this current role? And perhaps that's from a kind of an NZLS president perspective, but also possibly wider in terms of how you kind of manage your life and glue things together. Yeah. What do you see as your challenges?
Obviously there are challenges. Perhaps if I could just comment on the number of, as you say, coming up to 30% of practitioners being in-house, and of course, wearing my practitioner hat, I'm working closely with various in-house people, and in Dunedin, for clients, significant clients in the City Council. We have close working relationships, and indeed I'm on the council of the University of Otago, and they're just starting to go down that path now with they've appointed a general counsel, and I find that enormously helpful actually to, traditionally lawyers in private practice felt threatened by in-house counsel, but it's actually enormously helpful to have a productive relationship, and the work gets channeled in more effective ways, rather than sort of general instructions. You get specific instructions for someone, with all due respect, who knows what they're talking about. So that's so I think there's an important symbiotic relationship. So talking about the challenges, so I'm lucky in terms of my personal practice that I have a great team of people working with me, and I would like to see this as it's an opportunity for them. My unavailability creates space for them to forge strong relationships with the clients, because the clients know it's hard to get hold of me, and they know that these are the people probably doing the work anyway. So I think, and at the stage of my career, my partnership, I'm happy to use this as a sort of stepping stone for introducing clients to my talented team and my partners. So that's, I'm not quite in the position of someone sort of mid-career who has to go, is worried that their practice is evaporating as they get completely absorbed into the law society. So that's, there is stuff I have to do, but it's not bothering me too much. And then the challenges, I suppose, I am worried about where we land, with this independent review. What is the shape of the profession going forward? How do we cater for everyone? I'm really trying to do a bit of a travelling roadshow around the country, meeting different groups. Last week I was in Auckland, Hamilton, Rotorua, and I'm Christchurch this week. So it's in this age where everyone's being bombarded with information, emails, and it's all there on websites and blogs and whatever. There's actually too much information, so people are absorbing it, and it's ironic, but we need to go back to the old-fashioned way of engaging with people, which is sort of face-to-face. And so it really, at a lunch in Rotorua last week, and about 30, 40 people there, and it's really good just to be able to chat around the table and meet up with people and hear their views, because what's really important is we can't, going forward, we're not going to be imposing a solution on people. We need to be, saying, look, these are the issues we are all facing. I want to hear what you've got to say and what your responses are and your thoughts. We're not necessarily going to agree on everything, but I'm really interested in listening. And because, I think that, we've got to, as I say, we're facing that, if we don't get this right and we run out of money or we run out of members, that's a disaster. And I look back and think I've had enormous opportunities as a result of the structure that exists, the legal profession, and a lot of it goes under the radar. We just carry on with our everyday lives without understanding everything that's going on behind the scenes. And at my stage of career, I really appreciate the structure that's allowed me to achieve what I have achieved, and I want to see it continue. It's going to change in its shape and its complexion, but I want to see it continue. And I'm also, I'm conscious I'm of an age and gender and ethnic background where, I've had a lot of privilege, and it's also important that our profession not look like me, and that we have, that for us to be relevant, we've got to reflect the society we live in, and that's a multi-pronged effort to get there. Not just law society, it's law firms, it's workplaces, it's law faculties, and it's down to high schools as well, and our whole society. So, I suppose what I'm saying there, asking about the challenges, I am worried, and this is why we've got to focus our energy in these directions and have the right strategy going forward. We've got there's a lot of interests we've got to balance here, and we deal with government, and is there going to be a change of government, and is there a change of personnel there in terms of who we work with? So there's lots of things to keep you awake at night.
Yeah, and in saying that, Frazer, you kind of made a comment about losing members, not having enough members, and losing the funding, not having enough funding. Is that something that we could, or the Law Society or ILANZ can do in respect of engaging with members more? Because I think the engagement part is the biggest issue. When I was not part of the Law Society branches or ILANZ, I didn't know what ILANZ was. I didn't know what the Law Society branch did. I didn't know anything. So I think there's a level of engagement which is needed, and I just wanted to get your view about that, especially from an in-house lawyer's perspective, because you fall in two categories. You fall in a branch because you're in an area, and then you have ILANZ as well. So do you have a view on how we can engage more members?
Yeah, look, I think, I suppose I'm asking everyone to work together on this. That as much as I referred to sort of travelling roadshow, and getting around, and unfortunately I've got a clash of dates, so I don't get to your conference, but Katie, the Chief Executive, will be. And so I think on the one hand, it's the Law Society people like myself getting around and meeting and engaging and listening But also, I think it's like within ILANZ, it's encouraging that as well, and for people to be encouraging people to say, hey, look, you know, you're a member of ILANZ, but you also, you know, you need to stand for the local branch council. And in Dunedin, we have people doing that, like Maya Mendes. She's the general counsel of the university, and she's on the branch and making enormous contributions. So I think that we need to have people, you know, from ILANZ engaging on those levels as well. And but you know, this is all reciprocal. You know, in my firm, we have functions occasionally for all the local in-house council that we work with, and it's good to do that. So I think you know, people aren't responding to emails and all that type of stuff these days. I think that, as I say, there's a bit of, you know, there's an irony about having to go back to the old-fashioned ways. But so I would say it's not, you know, it's not just a case of sitting back and saying, well, I hope the board of the Law Society gets all sorted out. It's rather, you know, these are problems we all share, and I think if we ran out of money and ran out of members and it was a complete flop going forward, that's not just a disaster for you personally, it's a disaster for all of us personally. So we just need to understand that this is, you know, I know it's become unpopular to talk about a team of 5 million for the whole country, but, you know, so I could say it's a team of 16,000. But you know, that's what I mean. We're all in this together, and if things don't go well, they don't go well for all of us. So it is important.
Sure. Grant might have some questions for you just before we kind of finish the podcast, Frazer, but I'll let Grant ask anything, and then I'll come back to you.
No, I think we're all good. Thank you, Frazer. It was really helpful. I guess, you know, my observation for the Law Society is that it's great that we have got you leading us forward. I think this isn't just a time of challenge, but it's a great opportunity for us to evolve the profession in a really healthy way, and not so that the profession doesn't look like Frazer Barton, but so that it doesn't just look like Frazer Barton. And I think there's a chance for us to come together as lawyers and to be more engaged and to have a sense of personal agency and accountability over what this profession looks like and what role we might play as individual lawyers. It's very easy to sort of be arm's length and say, well, that's somebody else's problem. That's Frazer's problem. That's the Law Society's board's problem. But actually, there's a great chance for us to create a future profession that's stronger, that better represents the needs of lawyers of every stripe and in every place in New Zealand. And so I think it's if we can navigate this well, then we'll be set up to be, you know, not just present and surviving, but also thriving. So thank you so much for joining us. And obviously, Anitesh will wrap.
Yes, thank you, Frazer.
I couldn't agree more, Grant. You hit the nail on the head.
Yeah, and I think just before I wrap up, I just want to say, I think engaging the young ones is very important. A lot of them are going to London, I think, and a lot of them are going overseas, but engaging with them and keeping them, or at least when they come back, is the most important part, because a lot of them are not engaging. That's where the issue could be for us in the future. And we just don't want the ones who are already engaged to be engaged. They want them to be engaged, but we want more young ones to be part of this process and develop this into a profession for the next 100 years.
Yes.
Frazer, thank you for your time. This has been wonderful to talk to you. We'd like to have you on again at some stage. So we really appreciate your time. I know you're really busy. Grant, again, thanks for your time to be part of being my co-host. You see here Grant a bit more on a couple of my other podcasts. And thank you very much. All the best with the president role, Frazer, and do keep in touch with us and do keep us involved as much as you can.
Thank you, Anitesh.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.